All right, let's get down to business. Look at your clock, 4 minutes away. 4 minutes away from the market's opening, and it is a day after they surged following news that an agreement had been reached between the U.S. and Iran to end the war. Yesterday, the Dow closed at a new record high. Meanwhile, the price of crude oil continues to fall. Good news, reaching its lowest levels since the early days of the war in March. This morning, we are seeing it hover around $80 a barrel. We are also keeping a very close eye on the Federal Reserve, where the central bank will hold its first meeting with the newly sworn-in chair, Kevin Warsh. Joining me now, two of my favorite experts. Brendan Greeley, contributing editor for the Financial Times and author of the new book, The Almighty Dollar, and Natasha Surin, president of the Budget Lab at Yale University and former Treasury official. Okay, Brendan, you're getting the worst question. Okay, even Republicans in Congress have had a very muted response to the potential deal with Iran, right? Even Trump superfans. Then why is it that the market is reacting like the Strait is open, oil is flowing again, and this war is a thing of the past?
Because it doesn't have to be a good deal. It's clear to the Iranians and to markets that he just needs any kind of deal that will open the Strait. The markets did not care about Iran's nuclear program a year ago, and they don't care about it now. They just want the conflict to be over, and they want the price of a barrel of oil back down below 60, and that's where we're headed right now. They have everything they want. They just don't care.
Wow. Let's talk about the Federal Reserve. Kevin Warsh is having his first meeting. Trump has made no secret. He wants rates cut. But given where inflation is, over 4% at this point, what do you think is going to happen here?
Yeah, Steph, he has a sort of complicated balancing act heading into this meeting because on the one hand, we have inflation at 4.2. That's its highest print over the course of the last 3 years. So there really is no potential case to be made on substance for cutting. But he has a president who appointed him who has been very explicit that what he wants to see is interest rate cuts. And you have a situation where Kevin Warsh himself has said that he thinks the Fed should be communicating less about both its decision-making process and also about providing forward guidance for where it thinks interest rates are going to go in the future. And so I think all eyes are going to be watching this press conference and trying to ascertain, and they don't have a lot of experience with Kevin Warsh in this capacity, what direction and which way he is going to go. Is he going to pay attention to the substance, to the unemployment rate, to the inflation rate, or is he going to be swayed by the politics?
Just school us for 1 second, right? So this idea, and Kevin Warsh has been communicating it for a while. He thinks the Fed should communicate less. Why? And what does that mean for the average person who is clearly not a Fed watcher?
Yeah. His rationale, and again, there's like a vibrant academic debate about the extent to which the Federal Reserve should be talking about the likely trajectory of interest rates. His rationale is that in some sense, committing yourself to the idea that over the course of the next 6 months, we're going to see rates cut or we're going to see rates go up. Then it makes it harder for the Federal Reserve in real time to be able to adjust and say, oh, look, we got a few inflation prints that look a little bit scary. We need to be thinking about potentially adjusting interest rate trajectories accordingly to this new information.
Okay, so this argument works in the world of academia, and when Natasha lays it out that way, I feel great. Where I don't is this is happening when we have an administration who time and again is not honest, is not forthcoming, isn't transparent with the American people.
Yeah, I think the other thing to watch, though, is Kevin Warsh is not the Fed. Right, you have lots of other members.
Explain this, because people don't realize it.
All right, so the Federal Open Market Committee is composed of governors, and they're appointed, and they sit at the board in Washington, D.C., but also presidents at the 12 reserve banks around the country. And so what happens is, right after Kevin Warsh, he's going to be a reluctant communicator. It's going to be interesting to see what he says when he said he doesn't want to talk. But the other thing that happens is right after these meetings, what you get is all of the other governors, all of the other presidents, they communicate what they think. They communicate their response to the administration and to policy and to the interest rate decision. And so it's going to be hard. It's going to be interesting to see whether Warsh can rein everybody else in and say not just that he's not going to communicate, but that they can't communicate either.
I want to note the bell just rang and boom, already the markets are open. Only furthering this, we forget about it. The markets, investors were never focused on Iran. Right? Iran having a nuclear program had nothing to do with any of these businesses. So that's a great point that we haven't heard yet. I want to talk about something else, and I know you both spend a lot of time on it. It's Social Security. Viewers are writing in their questions, and there is a new report out from the Social Security Administration that's concerning. Right? If we were already worried that the primary trust fund was going to run out of money, get more worried. Now they're saying it's going to run out of money a year earlier. A viewer has written in and said, hold on a second. My life depends on Social Security. My required expenses outstrip my Social Security check. What happens if I run out of my savings? Like, where are we headed? Senior citizens and people who are going to be seniors, all of us certainly care.
We should care. We're in a situation where, as a result of the expiration of the trust fund, which is going to happen in 6 years, you are going to see, without any policy adjustments, unless things change and Congress decides to make choices that are difficult, you are going to see across-the-board benefit cuts of 22% for Social Security beneficiaries. That is, like, incredibly consequential. And the hope, frankly, is that it is going to push forward a conversation that needs to be had about how best to raise revenue and adjust spending, because there are only really two ways to do this. How best to raise revenue and adjust spending in order to make sure that Social Security is able to continue to provide not just for this generation, but for the generations to come.
Some are floating the idea of raising the retirement age. Does that fix any of this?
Man, there are 4 or 5 things that would fix part of this, but we have to remember that the reason why this date moved closer to us is the trustee report pointed out 3 things that have changed. One is there are lower fertility rates. We're having fewer children who are going to pay into this fund in the future when they become workers. But the other are things that we can control and have changed in the last 2 years. Lower net immigration. America is a country, or it used to be, where people immigrate and then they contribute and then they pay taxes and then that feeds into Social Security for the rest of us who are getting older. The last reason is tax rates have gone down under Trump, and that also lowers contributions. This is in the trustees report that was signed off by Scott Bessent. It's very clear why it is that it's not just bad, but got worse in the last year. So when we talk about the options for fixing Social Security, like, we need to look at revenue. We need to look at how it is that we're funding this thing and why it is that over a certain cap, you're no longer responsible for it.
We need to, but is there any will to actually do that, right? Take us to Yale. Take us to your students. Do you have any students that you speak to that feel good about the Social Security system, that feel good about paying into it, because none of them have an ounce of confidence that they're going to get paid on the back end?
If you ask students whether or not they think they are ever going to see Social Security benefits paid out to them, over half of them, close to 60%, tell you no, not a dollar of Social Security. And so we are in a situation where it is they are paying in as they join the labor force into this program with no real expectation that the program is going to pay out to them, because they are so concerned about the dysfunction in Washington and the capacity to actually meaningfully address this issue. And again, like, maybe I'm a sort of hopeless optimist, but I'm somewhat heartened by the fact that this report is triggering this conversation that we're having. And you're seeing policymakers start to say, what are ideas that we need to bring to the table in order to address this crisis?
The problem is the ideas are not ideas that people want to vote for in the immediate, medium, or long term. All right, we have to leave it there. Welcome to Money Power. You were both key parts of the Money Power Politics segment on 11th Hour, and now you're part of the whole dang show.
So excited.